If I might, gentlemen, 2 points. The technology, billions of dollars are transferred around the world all the time in encrypted internet communications. The technology is available to do things below the radars of the de factos, I do believe. If we had a budget and were better organized, we could do that. I do believe. But the larger point I'd like to bring to the table that I probably haven't articulated clearly, but especially with Lewis and in the spirit of Abraham's general discussion here about how to get the tires on the car actually on the street and running, I do believe that there's many more options available to us that are low risk and extremely empowering that the regular Beacon 37 group and
Charles,
National Assembly group are entirely unaware of.
Charles, when do we have...
You're trying to interrupt?
Yeah, when do we have the brainstorming group and the think tank to address that so we can start to assemble the nuts and bolts of this thing so that Lewis's concerns are addressed properly, and I do believe they're legitimate. I think he shares a feeling that a lot of us share internally. So how do we put together a think tank or a brainstorming group so we can generally attack those vital issues?
Well, first of all, we need to listen to the people that seem to have done the most research in these areas so that they can present what the options are that might be available here.
Okay, because I've been associated now for well over several years. I'm still looking for those options.
Right. Well, maybe I have. I think I mentioned earlier I might not have expressed some of my ideas here clearly. I'm glad you and Lewis are focusing tightly in this specific issue because that inspires me to articulate what has been thought of in my mind previously.
Okay.
If I might, and Lewis, I hope you're with us still. And building on the Beacon 37 Republic platform that's opening up, and I'm glad to see Michael's joining with us in, or at least has contributed somewhat in the Beacon 37 group there. That group, they are a collective consciousness all to themselves, and I can't help but thinking that presenting propositions to them similar to what I'm about to word here would be advantageous. And of course, we can do it ourselves if we get a brick wall in our face. But I'm optimistic about the Beacon group and maybe even the National Assembly group that Michael has been patronizing more, and even the Anna von Wright. Any of them might open up, but I think there is a low-risk strategy to doing this. Whoever the leadership is in this type of an effort should encourage people to assume not only the qualified elector's office at their local grassroots level, but also the more courageous among them, at least a little bit, the town constable office. That's a higher level of authority. That's a really serious level of authority. That's a peace officer. That's like a that's more authority than the chief of police or your local municipal police department, technically speaking, in real law. And also to assume the office of the Justice of the Peace Judicial Officer for the entire precinct that they reside in. These offices are vacant all over the USA. And of course, like everybody knows, there's big uphill curves there, and it will be it will imply confrontation with the local de factos. But we can custom tailor it, and we can keep those records secret. We can keep those records secret, off the radar. We can, in conferences and in jury verdicts and things like that, letters of confrontation against de factos, we can just refer to this as juror number 14, or not 14, but 7 or something like that, that is being kept secret. We can keep levels of secrecy for these people, and we can delegate. Lewis was focusing earlier on a general theme, I think, that's repeated in the Beacon 37 group, that we need to go from the grassroots up. We don't need recognition from the grassroots up to fill these vacant offices. It would be good to have witnesses from the local precinct to recognize the legitimacy of the local justice of the peace judicial officer, but lacking that, our national group could be the ones to be the two witnesses for anybody in their local precincts, and that would extremely empower. Because at that point, the local justice of the peace judicial officer can say, well, I haven't got around to organizing locally yet, but I am recognized by a national organization promoting these constitutional ideals, and I've got oath sworn affidavits from two witnesses of our national organization that affirms their sincere belief that I am quite capable of discharging the duties of a justice of the peace judicial officer for this precinct. And that should be, with the vacancy in that public office, as is epidemic all across the USA, that should be sufficient to tip the scales in favor of the local person assuming that authority, and from there under, he could start exercising some serious power, both in the local community and in the larger communities. I'd yield there.
Okay, so let me spin this one around. So let's say where I'm at in Nevada, right? Let's say I go into Rampage and I put together, a 100-man organization, and they're all qualified electors, and a select portion of them are town constables, and a select portion of them are justices of peace. And from wherever I build that rank and file here in my local community, most likely, I guess, patriot groups, other groups that have already assembled, and I present them with the idea, and I assemble the structure here locally. Does that mean that in other states around the country where we have a loosely knit association, that they would start building a mirror organization in the different other states as I'm putting together that organization here, and then at some point they converge on a national scene? How would that work?
Certainly the other communities could follow your model, and as opportunity might present itself, yes, the differing groups would naturally want to join together to lend support. One of the big issues is when you arrest people, where are you going to put them? We'll need a jail. One of our primary objectives, I think, should be to reach out to all the sheriffs in the USA. There's only 3,000 of them. We could do a mailing campaign to approach all the sheriffs in the USA, asking them if we have people that we've arrested that are lawfully arrested, but we don't trust the de facto jail system. Would you be willing to house the people we've arrested here that are guilty under common law, but are not guilty under evil empire mass confusion law? A number of angles could be done there to promote interaction with local sheriffs. We can empower those sheriffs massively. So I think there's lots of opportunity at our fingertips, especially if we start having people willing to assume these vacant offices under the sheriff at the smaller precinct and township levels. Does that answer your question?
I think fleshing out the organization way before the thought of any kind of arrest comes into play. I'd like to have the damn car physically formed before I try to throw somebody in the back and arrest them. Or without a car, and figuratively speaking, the organization is the car. If I have my 100-man organization set up over here, that's way in advance of any kind of sort of an arrest, and then have the assembly of that 100 organization with the percentage of justices of the peace, the percentage of constables, and have that entire structure fleshed out, and everybody knows what the objectives are, and they understand in the near interim future exactly how this thing is going to unfold and start picking targets. But until that organization is set, there are no targets. The only target is to build the organization first. And if I've got to do one here locally and say, hey, this is what it looks like, and this is already established here, at least in the rudimentary form, who else is going going to put a mirror-like organization of this structure here that I've accomplished here locally with your assistance and maybe Lewis's assistance to be able to help me think through this. And then as people see it develop here and I have to take lead and do it myself here, and then perhaps it will grow through osmosis in other parts of the country?
Yeah. The critical mass that you're looking to form 100 local activists there, I think there's an intermediary step that would greatly ease that humongous effort of trying to get 100 people actively involved.
You can throw up a baseball team and have 100 people in intramural scrimmages where all these little businesses set up baseball leagues, and they can put together several hundred almost overnight.
Well, no doubt, there's a lot of motive there. But similarly as Michael is doing in Florida, the events where there's groups of people coming together to talk about accountable government, that would be patriot groups, and then there's commissioners meetings. See, with fully up to speed people that comprehend how the power is really in the people, you can change the nature of the local county government with just 30 or so people. You can do that, and see when there's real serious issues on the table, like whether or not they're going to vaccinate everybody in the county. That would be a real good time to say, hey, everybody, I think we can take over local county government and convert it to common law jurisdiction, whereunder we would not be forcibly vaccinated. That should motivate lots of people to come down to you to the local county commissioners meeting and just dismantle that Roman Empire municipal model of commissioners form of government, and call the sheriff in and say, look, you're either going to start doing what our assembly of precinct captains want you to do, or else you're going to step down from your office.
I think that's like 20 steps ahead of where I'm thinking, just to have a rank and file before any targets are painted, and have a coherent, cohesive organizational structure. Sort of like having the whole baseball, what you call where you have all those businesses that have the baseball league put together. You got to have that league put together before you start planning any kind of games.
Well, we're not playing games. We're defending against the lawless acts of aggression.
Figuratively speaking, Charles, the thing is this: you have to have the league set up before you start engaging in the activity that the league was designed for. You can't start engaging in activity the league was designed for before the league is designed.
The league is just a community of members that are joining together for a common purpose at one point, and the leaders that are up to speed can be handing out papers to those that are less up to speed, and it's a real simple process. All they got to do is say, yes, I agree with him, and at that point you've got continuity, and if the focus is maintained on the specific agenda of whatever the issue is, like the vaccines before the county commissioners, or water quality, or whatever it might be, then that specific issue can be ridden to conclusion, and thereunder, at the same time, produce a change in the nature of the county or city governmental body that is in jurisdiction. And at that point, then people will have light bulbs go off in their head, and they'll want to be joining with us. But until we start actively confronting these corrupted Roman Empire municipal public servants, it's just theoretical mumbo-jumbo realm, like you were talking about the blueprints, no wheels or tires. We got to be talking about the real issues and standing up and speaking out against the corruption here as in symbiotic relationship. It's part of the growth process. It's intermixed in a tornado type of dynamic that can't be separated.